And welcome in again to the Fun Astrology Podcast. This is either for Friday, April 24th, part 2, or Saturday, April 25th, continuation of yesterday. We kind of left it on a cliffhanger there because I am trying to respect time, and I thought, you know what, to really do this justice, we've got to go a little longer, and I didn't want to go that long. So yesterday's podcast, or the one that is part 1 for Friday of Pluto Retrograde, is the predecessor of this episode. So we were talking about retrograde planets, bringing them internal, and right where we left it, Pluto being the planet of death and rebirth. So through that lens, let's just take the normal definition that we would ascribe to Pluto being in retrograde and say that that would be a time, if it were just by itself and it were a normal time, that you would say that this was a season that you would reflect internally on things that you would want to have reborn. In other words, what's standing in your way? What are the spiritual lessons that you would, or spiritual areas of your life that you would like to transform? It would be a great season of supported internal work. And I don't think that that's gone by any means. So we can realize that from Saturday forward, really from now forward, from the time you're listening, because it's already there. It's so slow. It moves so slowly anyway, and it has slowed down so much that we're already there. It just is a matter of time until Saturday at 2:32 p.m. that it turns retrograde officially. But you can focus on now realizing that the supportive energy of the universe for taking things down so that they can be rebuilt is there inside. And yes, aren't we watching that outside as well? So we get a macro dose and a micro dose. Now, one thing we might see happen through this would be an escalation in those areas that are just not working in our society. And I'm thinking of things like all this money that was supposed to be directed to small businesses that got gobbled up by big companies that donate to political candidates. See, it's things like that that maybe there will be enough energy that will expose those kinds of things. I think as we watch the news between now and October, let's just watch through the eyes of what is starting to present itself for exposure to be taken down so that it can be reborn. Now, doesn't that sound vaguely familiar? As we've been talking about Saturn and Pluto for goodness since last fall, that's the theme, right? It's always been that Saturn and Pluto conjoin in Capricorn to take things down, to rebuild them or shift them to something infinitely better. So maybe what happens through this Pluto retrograde on the macro scale is that death process begins to kick in more. We'll see. Something to watch. Now, as Jamie Partridge points out on the Astrology King blog, like I mentioned, this is something that we never get away from, and that is that Jupiter is always right there. So let's just put that together. Jupiter is about expansion, growth. Jupiter is in detriment in Capricorn. It's there until early December this year, so it's there for the rest of this. It's there for this period, let's put it that way. And it's grumpy. And you've seen how grumpy it is. So with Pluto moving back toward Jupiter, eventually catching Jupiter, and then they dance together in retrograde, what might that look like? It could, here is one interpretation, this is kind of where Jamie Partridge leans in Astrology King, it could lead to more virus. Pluto, death, Jupiter, expansion, Jupiter, grumpy. Let me throw another slant at it. See if you can feel this in the chart. See if you can feel this emotion. What if it might be a time of completion? In other words, the Pluto, the direct moving Pluto that conjoined with Saturn, the planet of death and destruction, Pluto, death and rebirth, the lingering energy of that spark is Pluto. Saturn has moved on. Now, yes, it's coming back, but it's not back yet. So Pluto is the remaining energy. Maybe it meets Jupiter this time on terms of reconciliation, cleaning it up. Or maybe it's not so much about the destruction part like it was when they were direct, but now it's about doing the work. So what happens? Well, our healthcare system has been shocked to the core. Our economy is on the total ropes. People are going to have to rebuild, regain trust in society. How are we going to go back out? What is new normal? All these things are cocooned in what might come together as part of that spark of rebirth. In other words, can you feel the butterfly starting to want to come out of the cocoon? I think if you got into an argument with a bunch of astrologers about this point, that I would be thrown out of the room. But I'm a little unconventional around here anyway, so why don't we try it and just say we'll tuck it under the brim of our hat and watch it as it unfolds. Now, the one thing that is near term, we talked about it in part 1, we've got these 2 squares that we have to deal with. So today, I'm saying today, Saturday, you've got the square with Mercury at 3:36 a.m., and then you've got the square with Jupiter tomorrow at 12:31 a.m., both of those times Eastern U.S. Daylight Time. So I would suggest if there was a little bit of unsettledness around this beginning of Pluto turning retrograde, that is the culprit. It's old Mercury. Remember, Mercury was in retrograde when all of this started, too. Don't forget that. And I think the other thing that we have to do is just stay on real high ground of what we're doing. Yeah, these are ominous times, and we've been watching this. The sky has pointed the way for us, and it's going to point the way through for us as well. All right, have a good weekend. We'll see you back here on Monday. Take care. Bye-bye.